Welcome to Horticultural Hints, Hoaxes, and Hacks. Join Dan and Randall as they share mountains of horticultural information, expose horticultural hoaxes, and provide useful horticultural tips.
I have seen some videos out there on the socials about, and I've heard some other people parrot it in the real world, that tomato should always be planted deep, and you should maybe even consider having a tall, lanky transplant so that you can plant it deeper. The idea being that that plant will be more vigorous because it will grow roots out along its entire stem, and therefore it will have more roots, and you will therefore have a stronger transplant. Have you heard this, Randall?
I have, Dan, and you're the veggie guy, so I'm gonna, defer to you on this. But I mean, we know that tomatoes can root along the stem, right?
Yeah,
They can.
yeah. In fact,
should that be our goal?
Right. Like we see tomatoes adventitiously root even like near the soil line. They'll send out some little roots that reach in there. Or if your plant is like leaning over in the trellis, that bit that's laying along the stem will root in right there. So yeah, it kind of intuitively makes sense there, that more roots equals more, nutrients or more water coming out of the soil for that plant. However, it is not required to make your tomato better. Like, you can have more roots there, but in general, having a stocky transplant that is, short internodal spaces, that's the space between each branch or each leaf petiole on the stem, having a stocky transplant will help that thing stand up to wind, to other stresses out in the field. Generally speaking, planting it deep is kind of like a way to rescue a lanky transplant that has gone through some stress in the transplant phase, in the greenhouse propagation phase. And you're like, if I plant this thing at the correct depth where the soil surface is just covering the plug, then I'll have this really tall, lanky thing that will be wind whipped and fall right over. So it's kind of, you can plant it deeply. And in that situation, I would advise do plant it deeply so that you can have some a stouter plant, or one that doesn't stick up as high. The real solution here is not to continue that every year and have those stocky plants. It's figure out why that plant isn't getting enough light and that is the reason in the propagation space that plant is stretching. Why is your grow light not powerful enough? Is the grow light too far away from the plants? Is the tray that you are growing these plants in so have cells that are so close together that the tomatoes are shading each other and they're competing for light and growing up tall? In that situation, fix that, because getting that stocky transplant is going to be all around better for that plant to grow in the field later on.
So I calling this a hack, a hoax, or somewhere in between, Dan?
Oh my gosh, I would say the hoax is that you have to do it. That this is that it will increase that you will
total roots.
Yeah, that you need to do this for a healthy plant. The hack is, if you have a plant that is tall and lanky, then you can plant that deeper. And some people, if the ground is so hard, they even will like lay it down in the soil and sort of cover it a little bit. That's desperate, but I got to say I've done it.
I do have a couple of hints about that too.
Tell us.
Be careful how you water when you're doing that, because where I have my garden at home, I don't have any irrigation. So, back in the day, and maybe even now, every now and then I'm using a watering can to water these plants. And, if you're not generally watering good enough then, right? And you just got to keep in mind that root system may be way farther down if you're doing that deep planting, or it may be a foot to the side of where the plant's sticking out of the ground, and you might miss it. So now that's a bad watering to begin with, but we all do that, right? I mean, we all are trying to cut corners.
Yeah. And I would say if you're a lot of the home gardeners that I see don't have like an irrigation system with a
Yeah.
timer and all the many will just come out with a hose and a spray, nozzle, and they'll just get home from work, they'll spray for, they got 10 minutes maybe
Yeah.
max, and they're going to spray it, and that water is just going to soak in, a
Yeah.
quarter inch, and those tomatoes really want that deep water. So in a like you say, if the plug is way deep, yeah, you gotta be watering them deeper and using a sprinkler potentially, or a drip system
Soaker hose or
soaker
something.
hose. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would really help, because I don't, you should not be working harder to get that water down. Use a tool that will drip that water out like a
Yeah.
soaker hose. Sometimes I even, on those spray nozzles, they've got like the dial on them,
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes I'll put it on the mist and I'll set it like, with the thing held open so that
Okay.
it'll just like water slowly, and not necessarily on a tomato, but if I need to water a tree slowly, uh,
Gotcha.
putting it on the shower feature would flood it out, but on the mist it soaks in nice and slow.
Okay.
Another hint for you
There's
there.
Yes. I just to add to what Dan said about light and a couple other things, maybe some hints about keeping plants compact is keep in mind that most grow lights you buy are like not anywhere near full sun, like 1% or something ridiculous like that. And so um our eyes adjust to light really easily, and so but plants don't, right? It's their energy source. So another thing to consider, is it too hot? Plants stretch when it's hot out, and if you have the ability to control that, and we don't always, they'll stretch. And the other two other things I would maybe think about is if you're using a high phosphorus fertilizer, so that middle number in the fertilizer label, phosphorus tends to, or excessive phosphorus, I should say, tends to induce plant stretching. And so I know some growers will eliminate phosphorus the last week or two of their transplants to kind of reduce any stretch they might have. And if you are growing stuff inside, brushing your plants, that wind action that plants have outside helps keep them compact. And there's been research that shows that rubbing your hand over those plants will kind of simulate wind and help keep plants compact. I know some organic growers have literally a boom in their greenhouse with plastic strips on it going back and forth to help keep these plants compact.
Wow. Now, I put a fan on mine to
Oh,
both help dry out help the media not stay super saturated, but also provide a little bit of that, blowing,
yep.
that motion. What do you think? Plastic
Yeah.
strips? Should I install a plastic strip conveyor in my for my trays, or is the fan good
Not
enough?
not to your backyard scale, Dan. I think
Okay.
I'd show them some love and brush them, or keep doing what you're doing. So
All right. All right. I just looked up the nutrient analysis of like fish emulsion, like fish fertilizer, fish hydrolysate. And the one I'm looking at here, at least, is 241. So higher in
yeah,
that phosphorus than the nitrogen or the potassium. Therefore, and this is a common one that I see people, use. It's on the shelf at a lot of box stores or Ace Hardware or something like that. You can
or
get it.
10-10-10 or something like
Yeah,
that.
right,
Yep.
right, right. That's another one that's there. So anyway, if you're using, a lot of times after a few weeks to a month, the original nutrient load in that media, if it had any at all, is starting to run low. And so organic growers at least will top off, they'll water over with some fish emulsion mixed in with water. And that will just, from what I'm hearing from you, using that fish emulsion in that timing can cause stretching to be exacerbated. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, if you're over applying phosphorus and the plant has everything else it needs, I mean, there's lots of studies that show phosphorus induces stretching, and so we just got to be careful later
Yeah.
in that cycle to not overdo it. So
Yeah. Of course, that's also the time when the plants are bigger and more likely to shade each other too, right?
yeah, it's
Yeah.
usually more than one thing, right? It's
Yeah.
usually multiple factors. So yeah,
Cool. Well,
cool.
thanks, Randall.
All right, see ya.
See ya.